All right. Well, David, back again, man. It's funny because like when when I look at like having guests on, there's a process to it, and you want to have somebody who's interesting and who can kind of hold the conversation, hopefully for for a little bit there. But when I had you on last, there was like we could have gone. I felt like we could have gone on for hours. Like it was really interesting to hear you, um, just hear about the whole like your whole high school career. Um, and it's funny because I told my wife so much about our conversation too, and it was funny, like dropping the hammer. I told her that story. I told her about your dad. Said he was gonna run out on the field for the state meet. Like, just all great around stories, man. But how have you been? How's everything going?
Good, and I appreciate it. I appreciate it being asked back on, and yeah, I totally agree. I think so much gets lost, like unless you were there, in that time, you never hear like the backstories that happen with everyone. It makes us like more human and just more relatable and stuff. And so it's fun. It is fun talking about those things. Been good. Just school's back going, as everyone knows. So it's just been crazy. Coaching cross country again at my kid's school. It's like basically an elementary school. It goes through sixth grade, but they get to compete against other private middle schools. So it's a cool opportunity. So that's a few days a week. Trying to get them going and keep them interested in running, which is pretty much just the general goal is just to, find a way to make it fun for them, and maybe they'll want to continue as they get older. But yeah, just juggling that and back to school stuff and work. So yeah, it's been a little wild. I'm
Oh,
excited for.
no, yeah, no, that's great to hear. I mean, hey, David Adams, coaching elementary level, but coaching
Yeah.
nevertheless. No, it's cool. um, you know, when we talked last, there was, like I said, there was so much that I wanted to ask you. We just like it's just running long, and
Mm-hmm.
I really wanted to hit up on college, but before it's crazy. But before I get into that, the high school season just started,
Mm-hmm.
and something that I think as a community, high school level, we really hyped up Eye Opener to start the season, and it's I think I'm guilty of it too, of just like maybe overhyping the race so much, and it's funny because I talked to some coaches prior to, and I was like, you almost if you run a fast time, people are gonna say, oh, you peaked early, and if you run slow, they're gonna say you're not in shape. And I was like, there's really not a win-win situation in here at all. And so, eye opener happened, and some really fast times on the girls' side. Guys' side was a little slow. It seemed like when they went out at 4:50, I was kind of already in my head like, okay, it's not gonna be a blistering pace today.
Mm-hmm.
But then you had the girls come around, and the winner went sub 18, so it was like, all right, the course, it's kind of hard to judge if it was a fast course or it was going slow.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I was curious if, like, when you approached a high school season, did you have nerves going into it, or was it just like because you kind of have to get the jitters out that first race, and that's why I kind of like a jamboree feel to like doing something before a big meet like that. But like right out of the get go, these kids are doing one of the biggest races of the year with 3,500 kids there. Like how did you approach every season?
Yeah, no, totally. I agree. It's a lot like how college football can start out, where they'll book these crazy matchups, and it's great now they have a playoff. It's not as detrimental to take a loss as it used to be, but it's exciting, and it doesn't give them the opportunity to work those issues out, especially for a team sport. But yeah, I think too a lot like we talked about last time. The heat is still such a factor right now too. So when you have one of those early season races, it's like hard to, control, like make your expectations reasonable. And yeah, totally like what you said about worrying about peaking, or at least getting referred to as that, but it could just mean you're coming out of the summer like an animal. But yeah, but within reason. And so it's for sure a lose lose. But so we didn't travel as much as kids can seem to now, at least for the most part. But we would start out with a few local things. And Coach's Classic was always that first big one where all the classifications came together, and it was also at Fort Jackson, so it was like a test run for state, kind of like they do with McAlpine with that big meet at the beginning. We so I had a little, you kind of bang the rust off a little bit before that race. My senior year was a little bit different. Our very first race was a home meet, and that was the one from the Drop the Hammer story. And so there was at least another capable guy there that, I had to work. And I did break 16 that first race. I think it was 15:55, but it was the first season opener that I had run anything, like that for sure. Even junior year, I was just normal time for myself. But I don't know that I remember being nervous going into the season per se, but I would always get nervous before races. I was telling this story at work the other day, trying to help people understand running and our love-hate relationship with it. But it was, even when I knew I was going to win, it didn't matter. I was always racing myself and like the time, and even at times I didn't need it to be that way, almost to a fault, to where I knew I was going to make myself suffer that day. So I was more nervous about that. If, that's what I was like, this isn't going to be all that fun for the second half of this, but it never is. It's always a thing. So yeah, mine was a little more focused, race to race nerves that I remember thinking about. Obviously, as I got older, just the pressure was different for the whole season, like expectations and, do they match up with what I am capable of, or what's going to work out? So yes and no, but also having my team, like we talked about last time, having my teammates and friends around me did help manage that. I noticed that getting older and being on your own, going to a race or something, it's a little bit different. You're like, I don't actually have to do this. Yeah, weird twist, but yeah. So yeah, I got nervous just like everyone else, but yeah, it's so early right now. You really have no idea how it's all going to pan out, and when people want to drop those fast times.
Yeah. Do you again, like looking at some of these guys, there were some upsets. There were definitely some upsets today or last weekend with just some surprising guys up in the front. There was one kid who he was running like, oh man, I wish I had the time off my head, but I think it was like 18:35 last year, and he ran 15:55 this year,
Oh my goodness,
and
that's
just
crazy jump.
yeah, it's crazy jump, and so like there were some things like that happened, and then some familiar faces up in the front, but kind of going into that race, you kind of have the notion of like you expect some of those guys, and when they don't perform well, you being in that kind of seat at that time, um, did you ever get discouraged of like running poor, or like what were some ways that you could kind of bounce back from maybe not the performance you wanted
Mm-hmm.
per se?
Yeah. Yeah, because it was no different. I feel like we expect so much of ourselves, and it doesn't. You have these goals, and you expect it to happen. I remember. I don't know if it was like if I was quick to forget. Like I would just bounce back in a way. I am like, yeah, I'm definitely. My approach to things is more of a positive approach, so I feel like that does help me with things like that. Um, like luckily for me, for most of my high school, there was a lot more to be happy about, and like the timing of performances went really well. Short of Foot Locker, it was a way better experience than I could have ever imagined. But yeah, it's tough because yeah, you don't want there's no benefit of harping on it too much. You just get back to the grind. So I think, I saw the results from that race, and it looked like it was competitive. Even like they were close enough. It was anybody's race until I didn't watch it, but the way they finished, I would try to gap. If I would try to gap people early, almost to like I said before, like I didn't trust my kick. I never had a kick when I was younger, so then when I when I was capable of one, I didn't always trust. I just didn't want to put it up at that time of the race a lot of times. But then it would make the whole race hurt way more because I would always be going, averaging like probably 5 or 10 seconds faster per mile than maybe I should have.
Yeah, it's I always tell my kids in a nice way. You have to break their souls, man. Like you got to just run it out of their legs before cuz like I said even with me like yeah, I didn't have the strongest kick ever either. So my thinking was like I got to get ahead. I got to surge in somewhere that they're not expecting. Break away a little bit just to get the motivation down as low as they possibly could be to
Yeah,
think that they won't catch up.
exactly.
um, yeah. It was funny because I was talking to a student athlete a couple weeks ago, and he said it was funny because it's like he mentioned he took the lead at state with maybe like a mile to go, and it worked out well, but maybe like the last half a mile, he's like, oh no, like this is not. He's like crawling to the finish, and
Wheels are
like,
coming
and you
up.
just know, yeah, yeah, and like that person's gunning for you to
Mhm.
catch up, and he ended up getting runner up, and still a great finish. But
Yeah, it's
you know,
tough.
we
It's
we
tough
all
when
know
you're
that.
coming backwards. Like you definitely,
Yeah,
it's like you come around a corner and you see the finish line, and everyone can muster up a sprint at that point because you. It's not like you just ran 100 miles. Like you're gonna go. So when you notice someone coming back to you, that becomes for sure becomes a motivation.
yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so I want to get out of high school. I want to talk about college experience, how that all went. Something that's like I feel like every year, or yeah, I feel like every year, everybody wants to know like recruiting process, like how was college, how did that all work out, how do I get there?
Mhm.
Um, what was the recruiting process for you? Because you had run, some quick times on the cross country courses, same as the track. Did you have obviously you went to Clemson, but were there other schools that were in the realm? Like, did you want to stay in state, or was out of state even an option for you?
Yeah, it's interesting because I always tell people now, like I said last time, is shop coach, not the school. I mean, to an extent, obviously, but everybody's going to have their preference or things they need. But coming from my situation where I had these coaches with a lot of experience, I for sure needed that. Clemson was always, you know, the school I imagined going to, but really just for no other reason than just being a fan, and it's in state and football related fan stuff. But they did start recruiting me at a young age, which was smart on their part, obviously. Um, I we went for I didn't take advantage of the process enough. Um, we went on a few unofficial. We took a trip just for my parents just wanted to show me a few different like size schools. It was kind of like an early see what kind of school you feel comfortable being at. So we went and visited it's totally different schools. It was Campbell University, and this is like after sophomore year, so I like wasn't really actively being recruited yet. And so we went to Campbell University, East Carolina, and we eventually I think we go to Clemson all the time, but I forget what other school is in that mix. But we were kind of just checking them out. NC State was one, and that if I could do it all again, probably the choice I would have made. Despite not, I just wasn't. I didn't love being in a city, even though it's not like a massive city. It's just Clemson being its own campus. That's just where I wanted to be. But again, like when we went on that trip, I hadn't posted times that they wanted to hear yet. I should have gone through that process like junior into senior year. I signed early senior year. Just it was kind of like a safety feeling thing. Like, okay, if I get hurt in track, even though it's not, that's not the end all. You're still that person. You're going to recover, and whatever. I just didn't want it to affect that. So I probably should have waited a little longer. A funny thing that did happen, and I've joked about this with him. I see Raleigh Geiger at Foot Locker over the years when I'd go up there to run or watch other kids. The longtime NC State coach. I think he's just now retired recently. Um, but I met him on the recruiting trip. and it was unofficial. I only went to an official visit with Clemson, and we were just randomly in talks, but I don't think he had been taking me really, really serious because I hadn't really done anything to really get his attention. And I talked to him a few days after the 1437, and he was like what did you say? And it was he asked me if it was a 3 mile race or a 5K, so that was kind of cool. But again, like you're doing the best you can. After we took the official visit to Clemson, like I just wanted to make that decision, and I regret not branching out more because I could have for sure after that cross country season I could have gone wherever. I mean, I was starting to just get unsolicited letters from people because at the time that's just what you did, you mail them out. So my options became really big at that point, and as soon as it did, I signed with Clemson. So it was kind of it was abrupt in that way. I took the official visit when Clemson was playing Florida State, so that was a huge game, and that was during when those two coaches, the Bowdens, were coaching against each other. So that was a cool experience. But yeah, I think I was just I don't know. I mean, there was so much of just being young and just innocent and unaware and just not, maybe in some ways being ready to be the one making that decision. And it was like maybe the easier one to make, and again, like the people I met there and like the experience we had, like I wouldn't change it for the world. Obviously, like it makes us who we are now. But yeah, if I could help someone here, man, maybe you should check this one out too. And that's all they need to do is get in on that campus or with that coach or team or something like that. It could totally change their, whole future. So. Oh, you got muted. I don't know if you're muted or we just lost.
Test.
There you go.
Oh, there we go. There we go. Oh, yeah, I don't know what happened there. No, so I was saying, the common thing is for, seniors to, probably commit, during the season. Maybe you get a couple in the beginning of the season. Recently though, I've seen some even, I guess, verbally commit junior year,
Mm-hmm.
and nothing wrong with it. But like you said, I think like having an experience to like go out and venture off and like see what's out there, I think is pretty important. I mean, and that's why the whole process is just really. I mean, nowadays too, it's even more like. I don't know. Talking to some student athletes, I'm just like, it seems a bit. I don't want to say harder, but it's definitely. We're in the age of just like digital media, so like nobody's. I mean, I guess you can get letters nowadays too, but it just seems like everybody like wants to email the coaches and like get on the radar right away, and there's always that. Track times are more important than cross country times, and this and that.
It's got to be tough.
And
It's like because
yeah,
it's like we have so much access to each other in that way. And yeah, like I always thought it's such a different process probably now than it was because of that. But in a way, I always thought it was like easier in general because you're like, okay, well, you run this time or you jump this height. There's no arguing with that. But again, like track being more specific in cross country because it could be in, the mountains or it could be on the beach. It's just totally different. So yeah, you run a fast track time and it kind of takes care of itself. But again, yeah, I guess it's good because a lot of people are not, maybe that would slip through the cracks years and years ago in some sports are getting seen. And I feel like, I wonder if we don't, because in a perfect world, yeah, I mean, committing early like that, but getting shot for what your worth is, but it's so hard to predict. Like I had yes, I was consistent within our state and winning our classification every year, but to have like the couple huge jumps that I had those last 2 years, like it's hard to predict that. And then in other sports, they're like, man, that guy's 6'6", 250. He's going to be exactly what we need in 2 years, But it's maybe it's a little harder with just individual sports in that way.
yeah. And so the transition at Clemson, um, you know, 8K, 10K, and even steeple.
Mm-hmm.
Why steeple? That's such a, I mean, like, you look like you could probably do it. You have some height.
Yeah.
And, I mean, definitely the shorter guys probably it's a little bit harder.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, I guess first off, just like why steeple? Was that something that was just like, why not give it a shot? Or did coach be like, hey, you might be good for it?
Yeah, a little bit of that, a little bit of try it out, try to see how it goes. Because I had to kind of give a little context first. Came in freshman year, had a good cross country season, even like we talked about last time. It was interesting going from 5K to now 2 more miles and kind of pretty much being expected to maintain that same pace for 2 more miles. Like, no matter what you were running, it's kind of expected off of like one summer of some training. So that was interesting, but it's weird how I kind of figured it out. I was lucky enough to win the first and third meet of my college career, so that was kind of cool. I mean, obviously they were smaller meets, but one was Western Carolina, I think, and then like the Citadel. So it was like smaller, but it was cool to do. And I got second at Winthrop, and that was my fastest time. I ran 24:56. And it kind of just I felt it in the middle of that race. Kind of I was actually back a little bit and made a move and caught up to him. So that was kind of a cool like confidence moment in college. Just kind of feeling out of place, just being it's just a different thing. So that transition, yeah, was tricky. After that first season, ran indoor successfully, ran an indoor 3K at ACCs, and we won the indoor championship. So that was obviously cool. Got a stress fracture, whole sophomore year, messed up with Achilles issues, and so this would be junior year when I tried the steeple, and I I was already starting to enjoy Clemson by this point after a full year of not running and just so I wasn't making the best decisions, not sleeping enough, like partying for the first time. So it wouldn't have taken a break, like taking a break from that. It wouldn't have taken long to get it back, obviously, but it's just 20 years old, not making the best decisions, having a good time. So when I did take up the steeple, it was kind of like, hey man, like it was sort of maybe this will get him back into it, because I was always athletic, always doing other sports. I wouldn't like I could grab the rim probably at the time, but it's not like I was dunking basketballs. But for a distance runner, it came pretty naturally to me. And at the time, actually, this was just a coincidence. I got a roommate who was straight from Israel. He was like a 25-year-old freshman, Itai McGiddy. He was a really really good runner. He ran early days with Oregon Project. I think he was like, but more of like a training partner at the time because he would have been in his early 30s. But he was just he was their national champion at steeple at that moment. So he came over and ran at Clemson and did really well, most after my time. But that was cool having him present doing the steeple because he was just it was you could just tell it was his thing. Like like a professional like juggler that like he just looked it was immaculate. Form was perfect, everything. So it was cool like learning things under him. But I had kind of like in that short period of time like I was no longer taking running as it was not like the focal point of my life. That
Yeah.
makes sense.
Um, Curious on, so when you got out of high school, that long run, what was the long run up to at that point?
I probably during the season we for sure didn't have a long run. Sometimes I would be told to, and a lot of times I would take Sunday a lot of times to recover instead of forcing a run. So that seemed to work for me. But I obviously had a pretty big load during the week as well with lots of workouts. Um, so I would say no more than 10 probably, but it wasn't there was more tempo stuff for like kind of middle range distances and just a lot of doubles and stuff was where I was getting most of my miles. But at Clemson, we probably, we talk about a pretty big mileage jump for the most part, but like the intensity might have gone down, but just more miles because I was doing less workouts at Clemson, but they made longer, maybe a little because they're training for an 8K. But yeah, when you
Yeah.
go to like your normal run being closer to 10 miles versus 6, that's a pretty, even just it being at one time is a much different than doing 4 and 6. You know.
Yeah, yeah, and that's what I was gonna ask is like because you know I feel like the long run gives you a lot of confidence, just to be in. Hey, I can run, you know, 15 miles and no stopping and be just fine because I feel like you know you do something like that, it's like all right, well I can basically do any workout there is because I have the distance on my legs.
Hmm.
um so did you was it easy to kind of transition to that, or did you kind of struggle where you're like, oh crap, like yeah, these easy runs are now like 10 miles and I'm used to 6, you know, that's an extra, 20, minutes out there, whatever it is. um and even with workouts too, like just the longer based workouts.
Yeah, I think. Okay, so I mean, with the training I was doing my senior year, for sure, I was definitely set up for success. Nothing was going to seem like a major jump to me, short of just maybe miles. I mean, even though when I came in, we were probably similar to what the height of my senior year was. But another thing I totally forgot about, it's still obviously still warm at Clemson, so you still have that high humidity. It cools off in the morning and evening more so, but then the hills, and it's not even that I wasn't like I was strong on hills. Like I actually did fairly well when I did have hills, but it being every single run,
Every
that was something I wasn't ready for, and I mean, I did for sure had more turnover than most of like the longer distance running guys. So I don't know. Like I always had strong calves, and it was just it was a lot of pressure on my Achilles. I guess that's something's got to give at some point. So I think I probably did need to either gate my mileage back. There was some adjustment that for sure needed to be made after the stress fracture. At the end of my freshman year, it kind of hindered training that summer, and then come right back into Clemson. I remember doing like a hell week or some type of thing where it was like we ran like 90 miles, and so that's probably my height ever. And it was probably after running 50 because I was like probably just getting to where I was able to do enough, So that didn't help. So that kind of led to the Achilles issues. So, but coming in that freshman year, I think I did handle it surprisingly well. We had a very freshman heavy team, so I don't really know if it was adjusted in any way for that. Because of that, we had a few upperclassmen, but they were redshirting to kind of help us catch up, make a more complete team a few years later. That was the thought.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so
um
the hills were big for me.
yeah,
Big issue.
that's it's funny that you mentioned that. Like I feel like that's something I guess right off the top of my head I wouldn't have even thought about. Hills like playing a factor in even like the recruiting process of being like, oh well, I have to run these hills every single day. This is not something I'm used to. Maybe I want to go to Florida or like,
Mm-hmm.
where it's flat or on the coast still and be there. That was never a thought to you. Like didn't matter
No, and I think a lot of that is just being a kid
being a
and I
kid. Yeah.
and just being like whatever, like and just being bomb proof in general. Like I mean, we're just used to doing whatever, jumping off stuff. Like I was not concerned, and some of that is like blissful ignorance. You just haven't like experienced enough life, but yeah, it just didn't occur. And looking back, like my parents, like they weren't runners, so you're not thinking about these things. Honestly, it was funny. My dad always wanted me to run for a military school, just knowing like, okay, well, this sets you up for success later, like. And I didn't even real, and I was like, I love geography, like I love that. I didn't even realize the Air Force Academy where Sam Gilman went was at altitude in Colorado Springs, like something like that. Like it seems so simple, like okay, why wouldn't you want to if go to altitude and train if you're a distance runner? But yeah, it didn't even occur to me to think about that. It was just like whatever, man. Like, and again, I don't know if like some of that's pre-internet stuff. It was just it was harder to be like a fan of running, and like it was harder. It wasn't as it is a little more exciting now because you got access to people and all the events. So some of that was a factor where you just have cable television and that's all you get.
Yeah. No, Yeah, no, because and you bring up a good point because it's like, now, you can find some stuff out there, but like you can see where, some of like the, Colorado guys are doing workouts, they're doing their opening meet, and you're like, oh my gosh, like they're in the mountains, man, like it's crazy, or just in general. But that's so interesting too, because I feel like it's just something that people maybe don't think about until, and that's why it's important to do a college visit, like multiple, to kind of see like, whoa, this is very
Yeah,
different
more
area.
than one, because my only basis was, oh, this is cool. These guys get to live in this apartment thing. It's like, yeah, but everywhere you can do that anywhere. Like,
Yeah.
like it's you just don't. Yeah, that at least for me, and I know like, I'm sure some people were very methodical about it, but that was a mistake I made just in general. And I wonder like when I got back into running when I was when I turned like around 30, I had not run, so I had like aged like a non-runner for this like almost decade, and it was like, man, like I don't know how to run anymore. And my dad saw me run, he thought I looked like a football player. So I just looked totally different. I think as I started running faster, my stride came back and stuff, but it was just a different thing. But my Achilles issues though eventually came back up, and that's what kind of I started thinking more into it and traced it back to a broken leg, I think in eighth grade. But I wonder if the hills kind of like made
Uh,
it worse much quicker.
yeah.
Like maybe if I would have stayed, obviously you have to run hills and get stronger. But I think just not even getting a break, I could have run. I probably should have just gotten on a treadmill or run around the track for my morning run just to keep it flat. It's like simple stuff. We probably could have figured some stuff out, but just didn't. Like I remember Jack Felix, who would have been he came from Hilton Head as well, and he ran at Tennessee and then went to Clemson. Had a lot of injury issues. He was a professional triathlete eventually, and so he was strong enough in the pool that he would go do some of his miles in the pool because he could get this like 30 extra miles of work with zero impact, and he was efficient and strong enough. Like I can swim, but I'm not getting anything out of it. I'm just gonna half drown eventually, just fighting for your life. So that was
Yeah.
we could have. I think we could have done more for sure, but just
Yeah. What were some of the first, like, I guess, things you noticed right away in the difference between like high school running and college running? Like, was it, I mean, because I know we talked about miles,
mm-hmm.
and obviously, like, meets are a bit different. You're not necessarily in the, you know, same city every week or whatever. And obviously, even the
Mm-hmm.
schedule, too. The schedules in college level are way less than high school. I don't know
Yeah,
how it
that's a
was
good
back then, but I
point.
mean, nowadays you see like there's like nine meets in a cross country season in high school.
Yeah. No, it's funny. I'm glad you said that because I totally forgot about that. That was the first thing I remember. Like, wait, we only have 6 meets. Like, it was just like it kind of put some urgency on it, and you're like, oh, and it was every 2 weeks, but it was
Yeah.
in some ways, I guess it could be considered smarter because it's allowing you to have these like maybe like a 10-day kind of block, for instance, and focus more on that. But like I think there was kind of some comfort in that high school having like 20 races, even though you know 3/4 of them didn't matter. But like you got to practice kind of, and it actually made it's easier than running a workout sometimes. Like sometimes the workout would be way worse than that, especially for like a Wednesday meet. So yeah, yeah, that jumped out. It was interesting traveling, which that would have benefited me, and I think it would benefit everyone now when they do get to go to those, like a bigger race, like maybe just one a season or something, or if they, obviously if they qualify for nationals somewhere. But I do remember specifically an indoor track going to Kentucky, and that I mean, awesome facility with that like almost 400-meter track indoors. It's like a 330 or something crazy, and just seeing all the other schools. And yeah, you forget like I'm a college runner too, but it was just a different factor. I guess it'd be like going to nationals, like at the high school level, but like almost every race felt like this to it in a way. So that was kind of like intimidating in some ways. A lot more indoor races for someone from the South. that's a whole other season that you have to factor in, which yeah, it can be tricky trying to. I mean, it's like the struggle with the pro runners. Like, how do you stay fit for the whole? You can't stay fit for the whole year like that, like racing shape, and you have to kind of find a way to do it because you're. It's a short season, and you're like fighting for spots on a travel team that's now smaller. So those are things that don't get considered, and it's yeah, you're getting recruited as a distance runner to run three sports probably. Like U.S. South Carolina was off the table from the start. Not that I wouldn't have chosen them as a Clemson fan, but it was like not even work. They didn't have a cross country program, so it was like it's immediately off the table, for if that was going to be one of the sports. But yeah, so that there you go. That's good. Less meets, so it's like I got to perform now, but yet you're competing over almost a calendar year. So that's a big jump. And I think even the girls run longer now in cross country, right? I think they already were like a 6K or
Yeah, yeah, I think they like I've seen most like opening ones made maybe a 5K, but yeah, for the regular it's 6K. I don't even think they don't even make a jump at nationals where
I
the
know
guys make the
that's
8K,
another.
10K. They just stay
That's
at
rough. That's
6K.
rough as a freshman. It'd be cool somehow to do like a freshman race or something. But then again, then you then you throw Dathan Ritzenheim in the mix, and it's like I'm ready to win nationals as a freshman. So it doesn't apply to everyone. But that would be cool if there was a lot more of those options, even just throughout the season. But then yeah, you jump to 10K, man, it's rough.
Yeah. Um, another question I want to ask, kind of in the same realm, is like academics. Was that easier to to knock out? I mean, this is kind of like I don't want to say your first time at freedom, but you have the freedom to like, hey, I need to run, I need to get my runs in, but I also have school. But now I'm like, you know, there's more freedom to say, hey, like I'll just push it off till another time and go out with friends out to the pizza parlor or something.
Mm-hmm.
Was academics any type of struggle for you, or you were able to like balance it pretty well, being on the team
Yeah,
and travel?
yeah, it was. So it was a struggle for me at times. Well, most of the time, but it wasn't that I couldn't have. It was like not interested more so. And I think I was in high school. Looking back now, I think I was smart enough to get by in that way with not having to work crazy hard, um, which is great. But I needed to I didn't establish good like habits like note taking, and I think I was able to remember some enough things to get by, and so I was probably like a B average, like a 3.0, but could have done better than that, and it obviously didn't serve me well in college when you have less oversight. So if like attendance isn't mandatory for a lecture, then eventually you might not go. And if you do that enough time, especially when you're playing a sport that you practice twice a day and like it consumes the rest of your day a lot of times, you're gonna it's I'm probably just looking for a little bit of freedom in these little spots. But freshman year I did okay. I must have. I remember getting a talk into when I was at home for Christmas because something had with my grades. But I did one thing that affected the tail end of freshman year. I forgot to mention I had a bike accident. I don't think we talked about that last time.
No,
You kind
no.
of see a little bit still here, like a scar here,
Yeah.
here, and have like one of those crazy broken tooth. Um, Fall break right before regionals, actually. I just placed like 11th, I think, at ACCs, and so we were going to regionals my freshman year. Riding a borrowed bike, and the front wheel came off. The quick release was not on
Okay.
there
Yeah.
great. It'd come loose. I had ridden all over campus and down some stairs, and I think I went off a curb like the final one, and the wheel disappears, and I wake up in
Wow.
3 hours later in the hospital with my face ripped off. The back of my hands were like literally no, just right to the ground. Luckily, a volleyball player's dad. It was fall break. We were like the only two sports on campus, nobody else. A parent was driving by and just happened to notice there was a random person on a bike over in the distance, and they looked back and that person was gone, and they thought to just go look, and I'm glad they did. And I was just in the parking lot. So I woke up in the hospital. So that messed up the tail end of freshman year, cross country. Um, so that affected, just going forward. That was just something that happened, and I was, kind of coming back from that. But I forget where we were going with that. What was the original question?
Oh, just we're talking about academics, but
Okay, yes,
yeah, or
yep,
into balancing everything.
yeah. So that's what it was. That I did have like an incomplete at the end of freshman year, fall, and it was because of that bike accident. And it was actually like an English class that I was doing. Like that was my best class, so that was easy to fix. But at the time of Christmas break, it even looked like I was doing worse to my dad. It looked like I was going to get like a 2.1 when really it was going to be close to a 3.0. It was like so we had awesome resources even at the time with tutors and study hall stuff. It's called Vickery Hall, and that was where our athletic academic advisors were that we talked to. So if you weren't making a 3.0 or higher, you had to go to mandatory study hall. And so I was able to earn my place out of that the second half of my freshman year, and I ended up getting over a 3.0 again, and then lead into sophomore year, and then other factors with injuries and starting to come into play. But yes and no. Good habits, creating good habits, to because it's going to be harder than high school. Even if you're taking like AP and honors courses, it's supposed to challenge you, and I think for me, if I could have just really gotten through a lot of the prerequisites and done okay, and just get into a major that that excites me, I think I would have been golden. But I just didn't quite allow myself to get that far into it.
No, no worries. That's crazy though. That's quick release. That's crazy. So, we leave Clemson, uh, and I always find it kind of cool, kind of like we've always been talking about, where you just get the ups and downs of like loving the sport, and um, I've had a few buddies throughout the years who have like, I want to break 16 again or something, or I want to run sub 5 again, and surely like I've been through that as well, and a lot easier being younger to do it
Mm-hmm.
than older. I remember it was I was I'd have been I was probably like 20 years old, and I was in Germany at the time, and I'm just like, you know what, I want to break 5 again. I haven't done it in a couple of years. Like let me spend like 3 weeks and like just like let me get it down. And I had I think it was like two. I had like two kind of like time trials, and I was trying to like pace it out well, and every single time I got to the third or I got to the final lap, and I was like, it's just not happening. Like there's just no way. Like my kick's not there. And I looked at the time. I'm just not. I shut it down. And so like went back to the kind of drawing board. And you know what? I'm just gonna go all out, and ended up breaking 5. Ended up around like 4:56.
Nice.
And I was happy about it. I was super thrilled. And like I said, I've seen like some buddies do that throughout the years.
Mm-hmm.
When you left the sport and at Clemson, and then kind of getting back into it, and what did you want to accomplish? Like, kind of, because like you said, you kind of got to the tail end, and it was like running was not kind of the most important thing ever.
Mm-hmm.
But then, like, and as an adult, more, you went, 15:30, running, sub 4:30s. That's a lot to have to like. It's a lot of dedication you got to put back into it, especially at an older age.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. I do remember. So I was about to turn 30, and like people were having babies, and like guys, I just remember guys like gaining weight with their spouse and stuff, and that was like, I don't want that to happen. I hadn't been running, like I didn't. I would run, occasionally, like a couple times a year. If it's like pouring rain and it's been hot, I'll go run, or randomly, or whatever. So I just kind of like completely gone from my life, and I got into cycling, and it was like a more like a fun like tinkering toy version of running. And then obviously I start getting fitter and get competitive. Broke my collarbone,
Oh my
which
goodness.
is almost inevitable. Is the amount of times being clipped in and just falling over is like, it's just so frustrating. But so I couldn't ride the bike for a while, so I ended up running, and then it was like one of those summers with a lot of rain, and I love running in the rain especially when it's hot. So I was being a little more consistent, and then it did not take long of like just got my first GPS watch I remember, and like so that kind of stuff was fun to start seeing feedback like that when we'd never had it. And I always thought I was going to be more into running with music, and I do now, and listen to podcasts and stuff. But I think I could not get used to it because I had run for so long without it. It was a weird thing that I thought I wanted more than I did, especially if you're running hard, like running workouts and stuff. I just need to be in my head, I guess. So it did not take long to start wondering, especially because I missed my 20s, like with running, where who knows the kind of things that if I could have. I think I looked at it every year that I was away from it. I looked at it as like this impossible thing to get back to, as if like my DNA had changed or something. Like it was a lot of it was kind of silliness, and obviously there were like regrets on my own part, like like just having these opportunities and not making the best decisions. Some in my control, some not. So there was this battle, and kind of like almost like I thought I like owed it to myself to like give just to see, to give it a shot, and like no pressure really, even though it's never a true statement in your own brain. But like I started just kind of feeling better, just running regularly, and I mean naturally. And then I did get talked into a guy from work who I would run with. His name is Enrique. He's one of the firefighters that's on our running team, that we wear fire gear and at least run one or two 5Ks a year, like charity stuff. He's on that team, and he was probably early 40s, and he had gotten into running. So he was always harassing me. Come on, man, let's run around the station with me. And because he knew my background. And so eventually I got out there with him, and even like by the second run, I'm talking to him because I don't know, we're probably running 8-minute pace in the last, anytime I'd ever taken a step, I was at least running 7-minute pace. So, and I'm still I'm in my late 20s, and I'm relatively fit. And I'm talking to him to the point that he's telling me to shut up and leave him alone. You're not supposed to talk when you're running and all this stuff. So yeah, he talked me into hopping in my first race, and I just been running. And the course was obviously short because I did not run a 16:30 something, but I probably ran 17:30s maybe. And then just kind of went on from there, and just kept hopping in races and starting to train and finding guys locally to run. We'd run workouts once a week on the track and long run stuff like that. But I think me finding running again at 30, I was like able to avoid that like drop that a lot of guys feel when they're 30, and now they feel like they aged 10 years in like 2 days. Mine, I feel like that pushed off until like 35 maybe, because of how much I was running. I was like literally getting healthier and fitter, the whole time. But it was about 5 years of I don't know how I was at our busiest fire station with a newborn running 70 miles a week, not getting
Wow.
sleep. I don't know how I was doing that. That's something that goes out the window, because I feel like I could get by with less sleep at that time, but it probably shortened the window I was able to be competitive. And then the Achilles issues would gradually creep back in, but yeah, I was super competitive with it for a while. It was fun to
Yeah.
be able to do some of that, and like I knew from the start I'm never PRing in a race that I ran at the high school age again. But just to get near my junior year times was kind of fun, just to say, because it's my junior year was no slouch by any means. So it was kind of cool to be able to say I was doing that at like 33 years old.
Yeah, the competitiveness, I think, in a lot of us is like sometimes it can even be like, like I'm not gonna get to those times again. Like, why even try? But there's so much like enjoyment you can still have in the sport,
Mm-hmm.
especially because you feel quick, you feel efficient,
Yeah,
um, and all that
that's a
stuff.
weird
No, it's
running fast.
yeah,
Running fast after not running in a decade. Oh my gosh! Like I felt like I was gonna fall down. Like I did not know how. It was just bizarre. Comes back quick, obviously, but it's strange. So it feels so uncoordinated.
Yeah, I was this was about last year, towards the beginning of the year. Yeah, I was training. I don't even know what I was training for, but I was training for something long if I wanted to do a marathon or just even an ultra.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I put in the miles, man. I was really putting them in. Easy runs at 10 miles. Not every day, but just about 5 days a week. Doing workouts that were just longer workouts, like 18, 2200 or something, or just long
Mm-hmm.
amount of 800s and things like that. Um, that's why I say it too. It's uh, you can run fast even at an older age. You just
Yeah,
never know. It's just a different type of speed. I
totally.
wasn't running a 5K in 16 minutes, but I was doing you
Yeah,
know 18-minute 5Ks back to back to back to back. So
that's what I.
just a different speed.
Yeah, we'll talk about that. It's like the old man strength thing. Is like there's something to it because I would go run once I was fit enough to now, like even before I was fit enough to run the same times with Hilton Head's team at the time, who had this would have been like Ben Gilman, Sam's older brother, would have been like a freshman maybe or an eighth grader. So this was a ways back, but Jack Manasotis was on the team, and I was before I could run races with them, I could hang in their workouts, which was interesting. Not the ones like if you started throwing 200s in at sub 30, that's where they would. It was a little bit different, but like any tempo stuff, it was strange because I don't remember feeling that way back then. Everything just felt like a race. But it was that uncomfortable, that just barely uncomfortable feeling. I was able to ride that kind of pain train for a lot longer than they could. But if it was these quick bursts, I didn't have a chance. But so
Yeah,
there's
no,
definitely something to that.
there is my son. We did like some kind of hill sprints in the summertime, just kind of practicing up on McAlpine.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, he blew me out of the water. It was not even close. It was not even close. I was like, oh my god! Like he's like, hey, can you run the last split with me? And I was like, yeah, sure. Like I got you. And I'm having fresh legs here,
Mm-hmm.
and he just takes off. And I'm like, wow, okay, I was with you for like 2 seconds, and that was it. But then, honestly, though, anything longer, we raced because he wants to beat dad. So we did a 400 out in the street, and I'm just like, dude, I have the experience, man. I know how to race. Like, I'm gonna get you. And sure enough, I got him on there, just
No,
sitting back, waiting.
man, it's smarter.
Little slingshot move at the end, and nicked him there.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so it is interesting how kind of the older you are. I mean, you just get wiser too, and
True.
how to race, and like kind of keeping in those tempos. Some of those younger guys want to go out hard, and you
Yeah,
kind of just know how to settle it too. Um,
true.
kind of to wrap everything up here. Obviously South Carolina, you know, cross country state record holder. Um, and going into this year, I think there was a lot of hype of like there could be multiple guys going sub 15 this year and like look and really kind of knocking on the door of at least you know 1530s 1540s range. That high school record, and I get it, and we talked about this last time, like the record, the fact that it has to be at the state meet is something that's just bananas, but whatever it is, it's still the time. That time is still there.
Mm-hmm.
um with a good shot of it maybe going down this year, and looking at how long it stood, um, what has that record kind of meant to you? And like now that it like this is probably one of the years where there's a good shot that multiple student athletes could potentially break it. If somebody were to break it after this long, like sad, happy, kind of glad, a little bit. It's a chapter that's maybe kind of gone now because you're no longer, the record holder.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting because obviously, and like I've joked with my dad, it's like the competitor in you is like, nah, like I want this forever, kind of thing. But again, it's like, yeah, I'd never expected to get it in the first place. I mean, it wasn't on the radar at all. It did seem untouchable at 14:45 for good reason, but nobody's run that. I mean, I think one private school guy, uh, Demarest from somewhere in Charleston, he ran at Virginia. I think he might have run close to that, like 46 maybe, but it's been very few, and it was on a different set of courses. Um, but yeah, it was never anticipated. I really didn't even I don't think I appreciated it really until I got older, and especially as I started running again, and it just kind of like you think back on stuff and you're like, yeah, that's pretty wild. Like I never anticipated, being known for anything. And especially when it starts coming back up and it lasts for so long. Yeah, it wouldn't bother me if it happened. That's a long, it's double what the old record was, and yeah, it's obviously inevitable. And it has been interesting. Like there's been a couple of those groups of kids that come up through, and you're like, man, this year there's a bunch, but it is, yeah. Recently there have been some core groups of kids that have been coming up. They were running fast times even as freshmen. So I think it's only inevitable. It's inevitable whether it's this year and like we talked about before, conditions and the course. We're unfortunately like there's so many factors that they can have going against them. But yeah, if I had any advice for if things don't, and not even that that's their goal, but just get on the track sometimes to get. I really regret not running a 15 or 5,000 on the track in that window of time just to see, because like you said, 14:37, even on the track, that would have been a wonderful time. You know what I mean? It would have been an insane time on the track. So it would have been very cool. So, I mean, that's obviously they have the ability, they can post get one of those times on the books, if nothing else, but it's harder obviously here. And if it's warm or a hilly course, but yeah, it's obviously been as I've appreciated it, it's been nice. I mean, it's been, the feedback and the reach that I've had to interact with people and hopefully, help them avoid making some of the decisions that I made that could have been just, minor course corrections, can send you in places you don't want to go. So I think the access, especially at least with the Hilton Head, there was probably 20 or 30 kids that I was able to get to know that hopefully just interacting with me maybe helped them in some ways when a lot of them ended up running in college. So yeah, it's kind of, there have been blessings from it that weren't expected, and it seems like another lifetime ago in a lot of ways too. But yeah, it's been fun, and if someone breaks it, I'll reach out to them that day. Like I said, a year or two ago, I thought I was reaching out to someone because I thought they had broken it. So that's cool. But yeah, I will pass the torch when that time comes.
Yeah, it's inevitable, which is great. It's great for the sport, and it's obviously a great testament to you and what you've done for the sport and throughout the years and everything. But yeah, hopefully we'll see.
Mm-hmm.
Season just started, so we got a long season ahead of us.
Mm-hmm.
David Adams, thank you again for coming on. I appreciate it every single time, man. Love having these conversations with you, and again, would love to have you back on. Hopefully, we get that record broken, and we'll maybe bring everybody on. It'd be pretty
Sure.
cool. So
That would be cool.
thanks for coming on.
Awesome, dude.
Thanks for
I
coming on,
appreciate
man.
it, man. Thank you.